Should be smoking outside. Nobody's in here but me. Text message. Up. Young addict, young NA, fellowship, grow up together. Any addict can find recovery in NA. Even a 15-year-old girl from an island in South Florida who learned to drink coffee and hang out with mostly 30-year-olds. Because she knew her recovery depended on them, even when they hit on her, teased her about getting clean so young, told her how lucky she was that she didn't have to go through real pain, as she suffered silently from her past sexual abuse, drug overdoses, promiscuous arrest, violence, loneliness, guilt, paranoia. The thing she wanted so badly to say was that although she was different, younger in their eyes, her pain just as devastating to her as the pain of a homeless junkie or anyone else. She was ready to quit. She was asking for help. There were NA members who told her she was too young to be an addict, otherwise avoided or shunned her. Fortunately, there were those who told her that she earned a seat in Narcotics Anonymous and to stay and fight for it. I remember the first time I heard the message of recovery, stumbling in wasted after the bell rang for my freshman high school English class wasn't unusual. When I walked in that day, I realized that something was different. The class was quiet and some woman was talking to the teacher. I made my way back to the corner. Other students, trying to avoid my frequent hostility, moved out of my way. I was just wiping the sweat off my sunglasses when the teacher introduced us to the lady. She said the visitor was a former drug addict and was going to tell us about her drug problem. Everyone near me started cutting up after I asked her if she'd brought us any of the drugs she had left over. As she started talking about her childhood, I wanded up a paper in my mouth and shot it towards her with a straw. Someone threw a crumpled up homework assignment at her as she talked of her rest and drug overdoses. I laughed and encouraged everyone to be as disrespectful and obnoxious as possible. The whole time we taunted her. Her voice remained calm and steady. Despite my lack of apparent interest, I heard every word she said, every word. I had already wanted to try too and promised to stop using drugs, but I always failed. Incredibly, I come from a wonderful family with loving parents and two older brothers who I admire. My closeness to them was being destroyed, and I felt totally unable to do anything about it. Later that day, two of my clean friends who tried many times to help me clean up by lying for me, carrying me into class or home, begging me to quit, stealing my drugs, and threatening to snitch, approached me. They asked me to skip my next class to meet someone. When we got there, it was her, the lady who both fascinated and terrified me. Both I felt. She told me she would like to take me to Narcotics Anonymous meeting. She said words that would later give me comfort. She confidently said, "You never have to use again, just for today." At the end of that first meeting, I found myself in front of the room with a plain white poker chip in my hand. I later found out that the white poker chip was a symbol of my surrender and and a reminder that I was gambling with my life if I threw it away. Strange as it may seem, at the age knowing nothing about NA, I felt that I had found something that would change my life forever. For some reason, I knew that I was okay, that I had found help. That is how my recovery journey began, leading me to the places. Ah! My book closed. Leading me to the places. Where did it go? Freaking A, man. Put lotion on my face. And now my eyes are burning. I lost my spot. That's not funny. I later found out that the white poker chip was a symbol of my surrender and a reminder that I was gambling with my life. If I threw it away, strange as it seems, at that age, knowing nothing about NA, I felt that I had found something that would change my life forever. For some reason, I knew that I was okay, that I had found help. That is how my recovery journey began, leading me to places I never could have imagined. Over time, I'd learn about traditions of the NA service structure. There at the beginning, I had no idea that one day I would enjoy being of service by making phone calls, greeting newcomers, handing out literature, setting up tables, chairs, making coffee, taking out trash, and cleaning the floor of the meeting facilities. Whoops. My hair's getting all greasy. Need another shower, even though I took a shower this morning. Despite pressure of all the other teens just doing time, I was blessed with a willingness to get a sponsor and build that relationship. I had no idea that I would be sponsoring many women over the years because I had something worth giving and was willing to give it because someone else gave it so freely to me. I was blessed with the gift of taking recovery seriously. I listened to instruct with the winners like I was told. I trusted my sponsor's suggestion to attend the World Convention in Chicago and meet and shared recovery with addicts from all over the world. Many of them are still clean today, and I consider them brothers and sisters. I have always seen my addicts whom I love die. I didn't know that one day the woman who shared her story in my class would relapse, overdose, and die after having 3 years clean. I didn't know that one day I would pick up 20-year medallion at the group she started, my home group this day. I had no idea of my good fortune for gambling on to NA not only at my age young, but also at an age when NA was young. I believe in the NA message to my core, not just from all the gifts of recovery, but from the terrible pain I have faced in recovery as well. There were lonely, horrible times that I didn't want to live through, and the times when I couldn't hold on. But God, the 12 steps, and other recovering addicts pulled me out of them clean. The Narcotics Anonymous message that I struggle to live each and every day in my heart is still as irrelevant for me today as it was when I first heard from that woman who had the courage to share her story in my high school class. That any addict can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. At the end of using, even the other street boys and dealers didn't want him around, but NA felt like home from his very first meeting. Sometimes he is the only person in the room, but that only renews this cayenne addict's commitment to recovery, a quiet satisfaction. In the streets of Nairobi, Kenya, East Africa, my name kept changing as my addiction progressed. Towards the end of my using, I was just the junkie in sunglasses. Born in the ghettos of the nearby, I knew a very early age about the realities of drugs, crime, prostitution, rape, and death. That's the part of the package in the slums. My mom passed away when I was 10 and my sisters were sent to a children's home. I was lucky to be taken in by my Sunday school teacher, a missionary from Norway. I attended the best high school in the region with a reputation for great discipline. My schoolwork was good. I excelled in sports and was captain of the school football team. I played for the national team and was sportsman's of the year. At my university, I had everything to live for. The future was looking bright for this ghetto boy. I started drinking and smoking cigarettes in college. Smoking contributed to the onset of severe asthma, and soon I was unable to play football. To escape, I took to excessive drinking. I cursed God for taking away my favorite sport. Eventually, I would take the drug that was offered to me. I graduated with a lower second-class honors degree and a habit. Upon graduation, I got a job with a pharmaceutical company and my addiction skyrocketed. What a combination, an addict with the keys to a drugstore. I was using heroin for a few weeks, then detoxifying myself with drugs that I took from company. Not surprisingly, my boss decided to let me go. My personal relationships were also falling apart. My finances was devastated when I canceled our wedding 3 weeks before the ceremony. Luckily for her, she got a transfer out of town. We already had a beautiful son who was caught in the middle of all this. I was a junkie on the loose. Heroin had me in its grip. The trips to doctors and psychiatrists started. My doctor said, "You will end up in the streets and die of an overdose. Guys like you never make it." And with that, I felt I had permission for full-blown drug use. As prescribed by my good doctor, I was in the street hustling within a year. I scammed my friends and former workmates. Periodically, I moved to remote towns to clean up. Eventually, when I returned to Nairobi, my feet would lead me like a zombie to the using joints, and I would be back at square one. I saw crazy, crazy stuff during this time. I once held someone's hand to help him find a vein, and as he passed away from an overdose, I picked his pocket. Then I rushed to buy the same stuff. Whatever he was using must be really good. I lived among the street boys and watched as they abused each other. I felt nothing. I had to beg, and when I became too much of a freeloader, even the scum on the streets avoided me. I was unwanted by the world, including my fellow users. Dealers began to hate guys who shot up. Nobody wanted a guy to die on their doorstep. It was bad for business. Fortunately, I was not a good thief, which kept me out of jail. Having no money to buy drugs and not knowing how to steal contributed to my willingness to change. With my willpower, self-help books, faith in God, and geographic changes, I could pull myself together and stay clean for short periods, but even eventually the pain of not using would be supersede the benefits of my newfound freedom from active addiction. I visited witch doctors. I have marks on my chest to show for their efforts. Nothing worked. I had been off heroin for 3 months when I met a guy I had used with. He looked all cleaned up. I wanted what he had. He led me to the first Narcotics Anonymous meeting. My intuition recognized some other guys I had used with. I made myself a cup of coffee and knew I was home. I needed to see someone I knew get clean in order to believe that recovery was possible for me. Though I was in and out of the room several times after the first meeting, I now know that I had a choice in my heart. I knew that the solution to my drug problem was in the rooms. The NA was my hope for recovery. I have never doubted this fact. I am now 3 years clean. In these last 3 years, I have watched others walk in just like I did, and I have seen the changes that take place as they keep coming back. Witnessing this has been one of my greatest gifts in my recovery. Meetings in Cayenne are small in numbers, and in clean time, the average meeting has 4 to 15 members. Most of them have less than a year clean. There are language barriers for members who can't communicate in English. Recently, public awareness about NA has been increasing. Meetings are starting in Mombasa and Maladina or Dia. Our coastal towns, there are some conflicts in the fellowship here, which I am told is part of a partial of growing groups. I admitted that we could have done better. However, I mark the progress. I hear the laughter. I see the meetings growing. But sometimes it's still difficult to get more than one person in a meeting. Personally, I enjoy the quiet when no one shows up to the NA meeting. It renews my commitment every time I find myself alone in a room. Although most meetings, that's like war room, where you pray in your room. Well, you don't have to pray in your room, but prayer, like War Room is a good movie. Have a minimum of 4 members and sometimes even 20. They are great friendships in the fellowship here. We make cakes for birthdays and have a good rapport. We addicts are really down to earth people. There's a lot of laughter after meetings. My cell phone rings like an NA phone book. We go bowling together, to the movies, to dinner. Recently, one of my new friends in NA taught me how to scuba dive, just ski, and parasail. I can never imagine doing things like that and having fun. My true friends, are now in NA. Service has been the cornerstone of my recovery. My friends tell me that I underrate all I do, but I feel apprehensive sharing about services. I try to serve with humility. Nothing compares to the joy of services or sharing the NA way, setting up tables, attending meetings, contacting members with each other, passing on books and other NA literature, corresponding with those visiting in Kaya, holding public information workshops, bringing together new groups outside of Norabia, and now recently sponsoring other members. Surrounding countries like Rwanda and Uganda and Tanzania are starting to ask for literature. We are working on getting them what they need. What a quite satisfaction there is in being useful. It makes me feel even better when I do mention it. Please do not take this as being proud of what I do. My recovery has been based on 3 fundamental truths that work for me. 1, do not pick up no matter what. All feelings eventually pass. 2, go to the meetings. And 3, pray. I tell my sponsees these same things. My experience is that everything else sorts itself out with this as a base. I have a lot more to learn about the NA way. Recently, I've learned that I have hepatitis C and have been getting answers from members in the fellowship who live miles away about how to deal with it. With this new challenge, my friends in the fellowship and even their families have been asking me what they can do to help me. I tell them that they are doing enough just being willing to support me. I am also back to school and postgraduate program. I've been talking to my son I almost lost during my addiction. He recently told me he loves me. He is 12 years old and has never said anything like that before. I can't express how much this means to me, especially after all the damage I had caused. Through my recovery, I am restabilizing relationships and making new ones. I am also discovering myself and slowly finding out what I can do and be. It far exceeds what I ever imagined before finding NA. Our fellowship here is still young. Visiting NA have given us so much. I have found people I identify with, tools to live by, and a purpose that has filled the void that existed throughout my life. You are welcome to visit us here in Norabia at any time. God bless. Narcotics Anonymous. And that was a quiet satisfaction. The next story is The Only Requirement, which I'm actually going to read that on my Meet Me on Live video. So, have a blessed night. God bless Narcotics Anonymous. Today's date is 7/27, or actually today is 7/28 night, and that's Elizabeth was born 7/28 in 1999. So Elizabeth is 19 years old today. Today's her birthday. Happy birthday, Elizabeth. Mom loves you. How do I stop the video? It's not stopping. It's still on live. Exit.